So he showed to me that if you're interested in that field, you would be able to get these certificates even though you're 10 years younger than your brothers. At that particular conversation, I remembered that he was talking about CCIE certificates because a brother of mine was working towards achieving that certificate. So I looked at him and I told him, if my brother can do it, then I believe that I can do it also.
Hello, and welcome to the Cisco Learning Network podcast. That was Aseel Othman, Security Product Management Specialist at Cisco. On this episode, we're going to be hearing about Aseel's journey to earn her CCIE certification by the remarkable age of 18 years old. This will be the first part of Aseel's journey, and we will be covering the second part of Aseel's story in our next episode. In this first part, Aseel talks about what it was like studying for her CCNA and CCNP certification exams at such a young age, how she prepared, and how she began shaping her own goals to pursue a career in networking. But first, Aseel remembers what it was like growing up and what piqued her interest in technology from such a young age.
I started off from a really young age, from around 12 years old. I was actually born and raised in Saudi Arabia. And I grew up being the only girl with 3 brothers, so you can imagine the kind of attention that I've been getting from my parents. I actually grew up being a tomboy, so I liked all of the things that my brothers liked. I was very much into cars. I was a nerd. I was a complete nerd when I was young. I always wanted to learn more, and I always wanted to know more about what is around me. It was very similar to any childhood out there. I grew up in a loving home. As I mentioned, I was a tomboy and I had a really good relationship with my brothers. And they were the ones who, in a way or another, helped me shaping up my personality, shaping up my interests. But at the same time, I was just a normal child who liked riding bikes, who liked reading books. But I was a driven child, if I could say so. And what has helped me in kind of knowing that I want to have a career in networking, and what has helped me in that particular age in realizing that I liked networking in general was the fact that I was introduced to different topics at such a young age. Now, what was the difference between me and my friend back then was that I had a backbone helping me and directing me in terms of what is out there in the world, and at the same time, what is going to resonate to you in the future. Now, other than this, I was a normal kid, as I told you. I used to hang out with my friends. We used to go out. We used to have fun and so on. But by the end of the day, I was a nerd. And I, in a way or another, I knew what I wanted. Even at the age of 12, I was very much driven, and I had that motivation given to me by my parents and my brothers that has helped me to reach to the level that I'm in right now. And I'm very grateful for it. Now, by the time that my brothers started their careers, they used to go and speak with my dad about technology world, about the certificates that are out there, about what to focus, what to do. Keep in mind, they're a bit older than me. And when I say a bit, I'm talking around 10 to 11 years. And just to kind of give you a background about my dad himself, my dad used to be a sales manager and one of Cisco Golden Partners. He was focused in technologies in general. And I remember that he used to gather me and my brothers, and he used to talk to us about the trending technologies, programming, because he was very much passionate about programming in general. Having these conversations with my dad about technologies, it made me start falling in love with the idea of discovering what is out there. And that was the start of it for me. Before I got into the networking field, I was learning a bit of programming, and in particular Visual Basic. It started off with my dad trying to introduce me into programming because he was so in love with programming in general. He was very passionate about it. So when it started off and I was trying to kind of learn about programming, it didn't resonate that much to me. It didn't feel that I was passionate, I was interested to learn more about it. It was just that I knew what it was, but I didn't see myself studying it or learning it over the long run. And that is why I started learning about other stuff within the technology world. So now by the time that my brothers started their careers, I used to hear my brothers and my dad speaking a lot about networking because everyone was either working in a company that is focused on networking, or at the same time, I had another brother who was pursuing his CCIE. A girl at 12 years old, I used to hear a lot of words like firewalls, like routers, switches. And like a girl that is at 12 years old, that was very, very much confusing for me. For a moment there, I thought that they were talking about me behind my back, which was not nice. But I was very much interested to know what they're talking about because I wanted to be part of it. So I went to my dad and I asked him the simple question. I was like, Baba, could you please just tell me what you guys are talking about? What is the router? What is the switch? Could you just please explain to me what is it all about? Just give me a brief overview. He smiled. He had the smirk on because he was happy that I was reaching out to him to ask for what they were talking about. He gave me a bit of an overview about networking in general. I started having and building that curiosity regarding what was networking, regarding computer networking in particular, regarding the idea of one computer can communicate with the other. And I was just intrigued with it. This is when, in a way or another, I kind of got hooked. And I started asking him more and more questions about networking in general. He got eager and he got excited actually. But then when I started asking him a bunch of questions, and in particular, I was eager to know what he was talking with my brothers about. This is when my dad realized that this girl actually wants to learn more about this. So why not introduce her to the Cisco certificates that is out there? This is when he told me that we were talking about Cisco certificates and he introduced to me CCNA, CCNP, and CCIE. Now, I remember back then that when he introduced it to me, he said it in a way that those certificates are achievable and he didn't mention anything about age restriction. So he showed to me that if you're interested in that field, you would be able to get these certificates even though you're 10 years younger than your brothers. At that particular conversation, I remembered that he was talking about CCIE certificates because a brother of mine was working towards achieving that certificate. So I looked at him and I told him, if my brother can do it, then I believe that I can do it also. He was baffled. He was really baffled. And up until now, he always reminds me that, Aseel, I'll never forget that moment when he told me that if my brother can get it, then I can get it too. And that is when my journey started into the networking world. And keep in mind, I didn't know anything about certificates. I didn't know anything about networking. I was just 12 years old. I was just focusing on my school. So I remember that I went and I downloaded a book online. I remember these days very well. With each and every paper that I was reading from Intro to Networking book, oh my God, the level of interest that I had was immense. It was like I found something that was missing. I don't know if that makes sense for you, but like it truly felt like I found something that was truly interesting for me. So I started studying, and I remember that I was using Packet Tracer.
Packet Tracer is a visual simulation tool designed by Cisco to allow users to create network topologies and imitate modern networks. This allows users to simulate the configuration of Cisco routers and switches using a simulated command line interface. So with this tool, Aseel was able to simulate connecting two computers to each other and understand the foundations of computer networking.
And I remember that the first time that I had two devices and I configured them and that they pinged, that is, they connected, that was a truly revolutionary moment for me. A girl at 12 years old being able to connect two devices and to actually be able to configure devices, that was pretty substantial for me. And it was at that moment that I knew that I wanted to have a career in networking. And it was at that moment I knew that I wanted to actually learn more and more about networking in particular. Because it might sound ironic to you, even knowing that I started off at a really young age, that is the age of 12, but it was like finding something missing. It was like finding my passion. The moment that I was introduced into networking, it all just made sense to me. And I don't know how to explain it to you, but it was like this motivation that is inside of me to learn more about the networking world. And not only to have certificates, but to have the knowledge. In a way or another, I had this power inside of me to go and learn and to go and to kind of grow my career, my interest in that particular field. That's how everything started off. So I went to my dad and I was like, listen, I'm about to tell you something that is going to surprise you. So I told him, Baba, this is what we call my dad in Arabic, Baba. So I told him, Baba, I think I want to do the CCNA exam. I think I got it. He was like, all right, that's awesome. He booked my exam.
Aseel started studying every chance she could get, on top of her regular school studies. And sometimes she had to get a little creative.
When I was in school, after we were done with studying and so on, and during like our recess time or break time, I used to have my networking book in front of me, and I used to go through networking protocols just to make sure that I have everything, like the numbers memorized, and at the same time, I'm understanding everything. So I used to utilize that break time that I have within school for me to actually go through networking protocols, and at the same time to make sure that I'm reading my book and I'm keeping my knowledge up. And I was always motivated, even at that young age, actually. Looking back to it right now, I won't even imagine how I was able to handle all of these things together. But back then, it was doable, and it was doable in a way that it was easy for me, because it started off with me just being very well when it comes to time management, but then it became a routine. It was just a part of my life, studying for those certificates and studying about networking world. Just to kind of paint a picture to you of how my day would look like. My school would start off at 7. I'd get back at 1. I'll have food with my family, and then I'll start studying. I'll study from around, let's say, 3 to around 7. After I'm done with my school studies, I take a 1 hour break. And then I'll start off studying for my certificates. And back then, I started off with my CCNA. So I would start studying for around 2 hours to 3 hours. And on weekends, I would increase this number of hours. If I had any questions, if I had any concerns, I would get back to my brothers who were already through these certificates. They would be the one answering my questions and guiding me in terms of what to study, what to focus on, and so on. I took the CCNA as any subject that I was studying in school. I was giving it the same focus, I was giving it the same number of hours, and I was treating it as an extra subject that I was adding on top of the subjects that I had. That is why I was able to pay a lot of attention to it. Preparing to the CCNA, let's say a couple of weeks before the exam, other than feeling motivated, I felt that I would be able to get that, I would be able to pass it. Because I already had the right knowledge. I was already practicing like crazy. I was configuring devices day and night. So internally, I felt that I was going to pass the exam. The center that I was going to have my CCNA exam had only one day for women or girls to be able to go and test out in that center. They only had one day open for girls. The other days were only for men. So when I went to go book my exam, I was quite surprised about this, to be honest with you. When I got inside the room, none of the computers were working. Can you imagine? Literally. And I looked at my dad and I was like, it seems like it's not meant to be. And he told me, just calm down, maybe something will happen right now. So the guy who was directing us to that room where I'm going to do my exam, he looked back to us and he told us that we need to reschedule. It seems that she's not going to be able to do her exam today. That was a bit of a bummer, because I was excited to just like pass my exam, because internally I knew that I was going to pass it. It's just that I wanted to kind of test out and see how everything is going to be. Then I rescheduled my exam after, I believe, like a week. And when I went there, there was another person getting out of the room. And when they got out, they were really sad. So my dad asked that person, and he said that he didn't pass the exam. This is when my heart dropped. I was like, shit, what's going to happen? If that guy is in his late 30s, he didn't pass the exam, then what's going to happen to me? So I got inside the room and the exam started. By the time that I was done with it, I remember I read congratulations. Like when you ended the exam, I read congratulations. But because I was so worried, I got back to my dad and I was like, I read congratulations, but I don't know if I passed the exam or not. Because I was so scared seeing that other guy before me. So then we got the score that I passed my exam. That was a nice moment, I believe. But then I looked up at my dad and I told him, what is going to be my next step? Having the CCNA was not enough for me from a knowledge point of view, because as I told you that I was always that kind of person who wanted to learn more and wanted to know more about what's going on. And in particular, if I was interested in a particular subject, I would like to know all of the weeds and greens and all of the details of that particular subject. It used to also happen with me with my school studies. So that is why having the CCNA was not enough for me, or actually only the CCNP, because I wanted to excel and exceed in the networking field and to know all of these pieces that is out there, in particular within the computer networking field. I'm a person who likes a challenge, and I found it as being an interesting challenge, I would say. And that is why I had it as a goal of mine. I didn't say that by the age of 18, I wanted to be the youngest CCIE, but I started discovering that that goal is going to be focused towards me having the CCIE exam or passing the CCIE exam by the age of 18. That goal started becoming much more clear to me. When I passed my CCNA, this is when my dad realized that this girl has power in her. This girl is actually interested. This girl is actually passionate about this networking. And it's in my hands to be able to help her in escalating in whatever she wants to do. I remember after passing CCNA, we discussed CCNP and I told him, I got this. Literally, I don't know, but I had this, I don't know how to explain it. It's not only passion, it was motivation, rolled in with energy, rolled in with excitement. All of these feelings were kind of clashing together. And I was quite motivated to get the second certificate. So I started studying for CCNP. Now, one thing that I should mention is that it took me some time to pass the CCNP exam. That is because I was still in school. I never stopped studying in school. So it was studying in school, and at the same time, it was studying for those certificates. Now, at that particular period, I wasn't really overwhelmed, and that is because I gave myself a lot of time between getting these two certificates for me to actually endure the technology and understand all of these bits and pieces that play a role within these certificates. Now, having 3 years between CCNA and CCNP has helped me both personally, and at the same time, it has helped me in focusing on my school. Back then, I started having my IGCSEs exams, and those exams weren't that easy.
The exam that Aseel just mentioned is the GCSE, which is the General Certificate of Secondary Education. It's an academic qualification in a particular subject like math, history, art, the basics that you would find in a high school curriculum. Countries like England, Wales, and Northern Ireland also use this as uniform framework for assessing students. The studies for GCSE examinations take place over a period of 2 or 3 academic years, starting in year 9 or 10 for the majority of students. According to the website politics.co.uk, quote, albeit unpleasant, the traditional exam assessment experience is also said to be important in preparing pupils for workplace norms. Skills including self-discipline, time management, and personal resilience are all instilled during a pupil's journey through the GCSEs.
So trying to kind of accommodate between studying for my IGCSEs, my O-levels, my A-levels, and at the same time focusing on my CCNP exam was pretty interesting. I'm not going to say exhausting, but at the same time, again, I was taking my book with me during my break time. I would go and learn about these new protocols. And what I liked about CCNP was that the amount of knowledge that you would get with that particular certificate, it gives you that sense of being a professional in networking. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but the amount of knowledge has increased, and I quite like that. So I was obviously practicing in my home, those configuring devices, configuring a larger network. I was working on larger networks now, and I enjoyed every bit of it. When I tell you that I was configuring devices, I was configuring EIGR, POSPF, and all of these protocols, I had a smile on my face all the time. I was truly happy. Again, it goes back to the whole finding your passion thing. When you find your passion and you practice your passion daily, it gives you that power, it gives you that motivation, it gives you that sense of achieving the unachievable. By the time that I was focusing on my IGCSEs, I was also focusing on my CCNP. Now, within the CCNP exam back then, it was 3 exams. The first one was routing, the second one was switching, the third one was troubleshooting. Every exam that you go to, it depends on how much you have studied, but at the same time, you still have that feeling of nervousness that, am I going to succeed fully by taking this exam or not? Now, in general, not only throughout taking exams for my Cisco certificates and also for taking exams in general for my school subjects, when I used to get in an exam, I have a range for myself, depending on how much I've studied for it. It's either that I get this range between 100 and 95, or it's either that I get it between 95 and 90. Every time that I used to get in an exam, failure was not an option for me, not even 1%. Failure was not even in my dictionary. And I was able to pass them 3 of them from the first attempt. That was an exciting moment. That was truly exciting. So I got my CCNP by the age of 15. Every certificates that I used to get out of the exam, roll up my sleeve, and focus on the next stop. That is why it was more of a challenge, and at the same time, it was more of me wanting to learn more and to know more about a subject that I was truly, truly passionate about.
We're going to stop here in Aseel's story. As you heard, she was able to earn her CCNA and CCNP certifications, and she had formed her goal of earning her CCIE certification, the highest and most valued certification in Cisco's portfolio, by the time she turns 18. But in the next episode, things get much harder for Aseel as she tries juggling her CCIE exam studies with a new part of her life, college. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the Cisco Learning Network podcast to hear more stories about individuals and their journeys to earn certifications, as well as news from industry experts about the evolving world of Cisco certifications. Please also visit the Cisco Learning Network at www.ciscolearningnetwork.com to find all kinds of training videos and study groups that will help you in your certification journey. Thanks for listening.